Hello and welcome to Tell Muses, the storytelling podcast for storytellers, with storytellers, from storytellers, all about storytelling and all about stories. So today we have with us the wonderful, the marvelous, the one and only David Heathfield. David,
It's
thank you so
too
much
much.
for
It's too
coming.
much. I'm just David Heathfield. Just
Ooh, you're the wonderful Heathfield. And we're very, very content to have you with us, David.
well,
So,
thank you for that over-the-top introduction, and it really was over the top.
well, I'm sure that during this interview, people will find out that it was not over the top. Would you please like to tell us a few things about yourself? Tell people who David Heathfield is and what he does?
Okay, well, I'm David Heathfield. I'm a storyteller, but I'm not only a storyteller because I think of myself primarily as a human being, citizen of the world, husband, father, son, brother, friend, and of course, I didn't become a storyteller like most storytellers I know, officially until quite far into my career. I was an English language teacher for many years. I still work in English language education. I got involved in using drama, particularly in storytelling, because I got interested in theatre as a passion more than a hobby. And then I discovered through theatre storytelling, and I was incorporating drama already into my teaching, and I was also naturally including stories. But more and more, I became interested in traditional stories. So I guess now my work is mainly around storytelling and particularly working with people, mostly teachers of English as a second language, in developing themselves as storytelling teachers.
David, how did you get involved into storytelling? Did you grow up with stories and people telling you stories? Did you listen to many storytellers? How did the idea of getting involved in storytelling started for you?
Well, definitely as a child, I love stories. I used to read a lot. I was an early reader and an avid reader as a child. I think it was my dad probably had a bit of an influence because I've got three sisters, and he would come home from a very busy day at the office, and often it would be, in England, the children go to bed early. So we would go to bed at 7 o'clock at the same time he got home from work. And he would sit on the end of the bed. I shared a bedroom with my younger sister, Alison, and he would tell us a story or sing us a song. And he had a really, I mean, I tried to learn the guitar on his guitar, and it was such a terrible guitar, but somehow it didn't matter when you're very young. And he played very basic, strumming away and singing kind of country songs. Oh, I don't really know, but the stories, I think he used to make them up, and I think they were made up kind of interactively with us. So there were lots of stories about bears, the yellow bear, the blue bear, the green bear, the brown bear, and I think they kind of were based on our lives. I can't really remember. So there was a lot of interaction, a lot of invention. So there's definitely an influence from very young years there. But much later on, after studying languages, I can't say that I was very hot on literature. I love reading novels, but it wasn't my thing, really, formal literature. It was really, as I mentioned, through theatre, and then well, Jeff Fox was in the same theatre group as me. Jeff Fox is still around and a very close friend. And he got very interested in traditional storytelling at the same time that he was a professor lecturer in English in education at the University of Exeter. And at our theatre group, he did a one-off workshop on traditional storytelling, and that set me on my way. And Jeff, I met up with him a couple of weeks ago, and he still laughs about my baptism of fire as a storyteller, because I was playing Robin Hood in a touring schools production of Robin Hood. And to promote the show, we agreed that we would get some of the actors would go into the schools during the day and tell Robin Hood stories. So not act them, but tell them. And so each of us learned a favorite Robin Hood story, and John and Jeff coached us. And I was all ready and excited and went into this classroom with 11-year-old children. And it was a horrible experience. The kids were undisciplined. The teacher that should have been there didn't turn up. So it was just me and a bunch of children who were thinking, what on earth is going on here? They didn't listen to me. They were rude. And I came out of it like sweating. And Jeff said, oh, and asked me what had happened. And he said, I can't believe after that experience, you went on to become a storyteller, David. So yeah, but I kind of knew that I wanted to do it because I'd already been doing it with my students who I was teaching English to. But that was my first kind of, going in as a guest storyteller, if you like.
That's very interesting. Many of the tellers we've met and we've interviewed here with Simona have had some sort of contact or have tried drama first or have had some education concerning drama. And you, who have done both, would you mind telling us what you see are the differences or the contradictions between the two, drama and storytelling?
Well, I might differ in my opinions from some of the storytellers in that I don't see storytelling and theatre as that different. I think they're on the same spectrum. I think they're both can be forms of performance and education. I mean, I do theatre in training medical students in communication skills. So theatre can be applied in many different ways, as storytelling can be applied in many different ways. I think there's a difference between traditional theatre on a stage with a curtain and the proscenium arch style theatre, but theatre's changed and evolved over the last 100 or so years, and storytelling I also see as a very adaptable and flexible art form. I think the one difference people often make is with storytelling, we're interacting directly with an audience and we are most of the time narrating the story and then maybe occasionally stepping into character. Whereas in theatre, generally speaking, there's a separation. But even then, you see, the theatre I did in community theatre, when I was playing Robin Hood, for example, I would interact with the audience. I would have call and response with the audience. I would go into the audience. I would have conversations with the audience. So it wasn't that traditional form of theatre. So really, where is the difference? It's on the spectrum. I find it hard to really separate the two out, and I employ quite a lot of theatre devices and skills in my storytelling.
I see. Well, last year I went to one of the epic weekends that Marion Lipper and Kath Edwards do here, and the theme was Robin Hood. I can say now, I am proud to say that I think I know most of the stories. It was really, really
Well, there are quite a lot. There are quite a lot.
Oh, yes.
Because there's the kind of the official ones, but there's all sorts of spin-off stories as well that have been created over the years.
Most of us have just a faint idea of what Robin Hood is from Hollywood or from films we've seen on TV. Even past versions or more modern or more funnier ones. Sometimes it's been replayed as a comedy, and it was true. It just missed so much of of what the story is about. And I didn't know how Robin's life ended. That was a shock, to be honest. Yeah. I'm not spoiling Simona in case you don't know.
So, David, Despina and I both got to know you during one of your courses. the Crest course, and well, it was my first approach with storytelling and storytelling in language teaching. And well, I always tell everyone go on one of David's courses because it's wonderful. Like the atmosphere that you can create on your courses is absolutely amazing. And well, I took more than one of your courses. And can you tell us something about them? And
I
how
love
did
the
you come
story
up
of
with
how
the
you came
idea?
to do the course because I was doing a conference
Yeah.
session for International House in Milan, and I asked for a volunteer to participate, and Simona appeared on the screen as a volunteer and just really got into well, it was wonderful. I think was it the story of Tipingi?
Yes, so
And there
it
was a
was
chant
Tiffany and it was Plop. You
and
did
plop.
two stories.
Okay. And anyway, afterwards, Simona said, "Oh, I'm interested in your course." And I said, "Well, I started a course last Saturday, but there's a space if you want to join us." And Simona just jumped in, feet first, and it was just like I said, if you don't do it now, you might never do it. And there we are. And there was this wonderful, and it wasn't like you just jumped in and you jumped in totally because you put so much energy into the course and so much preparation. And I thought this is a person who's taking this course very seriously and going to get something big out of it. And you have. It's really impressive to see your trajectory since doing the Crest course. It's been
Thank
amazing.
you. Well, I
But
had
yeah,
a wonderful teacher.
uh, thank you very much. I mean, everybody's different. I mean, Despina came into the course as an experienced storyteller, and will have got lots of things from that perspective. And that's one of the things I love about the courses. Everybody who gets involved has some connection with education. Most people are teachers. Some people say, I've never done storytelling before. Others are professionals. But nobody has ever said to me, oh, it was too high a level or it was too lower level, because I have a strong belief that we're all in it together. My role isn't to be a kind of guru who talks down and says, I'm the font of all wisdom. But what we all bring to the course as human beings and educators, we all have so much to offer. And one of the best things for me about Crest is it's genuinely global. And it was such a treat for me. It's the one great thing for me personally that came out of the pandemic, because before the pandemic, I was often traveling to other countries outside of the UK and running short workshops for teachers, a couple of hours or maybe at most half a day, and about storytelling. And it was always wonderful. It was always great. And it was great because you could apply what I was, everybody was teaching in a similar context because it would be an institution. It was great because everyone had common needs. But I always thought, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful? Because my whole ethos is about intercultural communication, sharing the planet, respecting difference, celebrating cultural diversity. That's who I am, really. And I've been that way for, all my career. And then to actually realize that I could do a course online on Zoom, which I was just getting to know because of teaching online during the pandemic. I could bring teachers together and offer it to teachers in different parts of the world. And here's a genuine opportunity for this cultural exchange. And one of the joys of the course is having teachers who come from countries where, well, maybe the course is affordable, but also being able to offer funded places to people from very diverse parts of the world. And I've had lots, for example, over the last, I think, 10 courses. In each one, I've had one or more than one teachers from Africa who have come to me via Africa ELTA, English Language Teaching Association Africa, thanks to my good friend Harry Kucha Kucha. And we've always looked for younger teachers who are very dynamic and getting into teacher training and very involved in their national teaching associations and the Africa Teaching Association. So they're teachers that are very keen to share what they're learning in their communities, and they're brilliant storytellers. So it's just like this idea of spreading the idea far and wide, and they come as already very competent, very creative storytellers, but just having, having just coming to a place where we could just share ideas across from India. And also there've been many, many teachers from Palestine, particularly from Gaza, who've done the CREST course as well. So that for me is the joy of the course, probably more than anything else, is the cultural sharing.
Yeah, that's what I hold most dear from your courses as well. I mean, some of the people we met during the courses, perhaps we should explain to our listeners what the acronym CREST stands for. I think we haven't mentioned it, right?
Well, the very, very first course, I decided to call it Creative and Engaging Storytelling for Teachers. And that was it. It was just rather a long title, but that's what it was called. And on the very first course, a wonderful woman who you both know called Mindy Neo was on the course. And after the first session, Mindy said, "I'm really enjoying this CREST course." And I said, "What?" "This CREST course." And she said, "David, Mindy, David, I love acronyms," she said. "Creative and engaging storytelling for teachers. This course is CREST." And from that moment, the name stuck.
It was not premeditated.
Not at all. It was Mindy that really made me. It hadn't even occurred to me that there might be an acronym. So there we are.
Excellent. And some of the people we've met during those courses are still our friends today. I mean, we've had Amna Burki here with Simona. We interviewed Amna. She's a wonderful person. And it's always nice to meet other colleagues who are also motivated to try different ways, different approaches towards their kids and their teaching.
It's all about community, and the CREST community is a very special community. Yeah.
I also remember how different kinds of people from different backgrounds, but not only that, it was not just the intercultural exchange, it was also people brought different things concerning storytelling. And it was okay for anyone, as you said. It's like teaching a mixed level class, I guess. You can have people motivated and getting involved at any level. And what I remember characteristically from your courses is that any judgment was, let us say, forbidden. There was no judging, so anybody could come and try out a tale in any way they could. They could try out different things, and they would be encouraged to go ahead and try more. And I think this is what allowed people to be more bold in their approach.
My approach as a teacher over many years was always to focus on encouragement, but not just to say that was wonderful, but to focus on the positive, to give praise where praise is due and encouragement, and encouraging peers to give encouragement to each other about what they enjoyed, and to be specific, because using criticality, saying not "I enjoyed your story, but I enjoyed the way you used your hands to tell that story," or "I enjoyed the way you got us to repeat the refrain with you." So it's not just, "Oh, that was lovely," but what is it that worked? And I think it's about noticing. It's all about noticing what other people are doing, and then becoming aware of what I myself am doing as a teacher or as a storyteller. And that for me, I think is the key. I was very influenced by Mario Rinvolucri, wonderful teacher trainer and writer in English language teaching. And Mario, for example, wrote a book about applying neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, in language teaching. And I hadn't heard of NLP before I read his book, but I read about it and I realized that that's kind of what I do. I focus on the positive, and it really reinforced my own thinking about teaching, that, we can really just make a huge difference to people's self-belief, because I believe that language learning is mostly to do with confidence and letting blocks fall away. Because so many people are blocked when it comes to learning languages. They think, "I can't do this." And it's all to do with things that have happened at school or in family or in history or culturally. And it's let's just let those blocks not knock them down, but just let them fall away. Because if we're playing in a language, if we're doing drama and story, people forget the blocks and they just communicate with each other in the best way they can, which might be not just verbally, but also physically, emotionally, expressing themselves, something that they desperately want to share with each other. And then the inhibitions just fall away.
Yeah, and even though as educators we are accustomed to addressing an audience, let's say, because we talk to the kids, we talk to our students, people tend at first, especially, to feel self-conscious when they have to do like this sort of performance, even if it is among peers. But one of the things that's magical during that experience is that you are trained not only as a storyteller, but also as a listener, and a very attentive listener, as you so eloquently put it. That encouragement that we were taught to give each other during the CREST course also remains as a lesson for us to be used during our classes, because we do the same with students. You have to suppress the critical side of the teacher and just let the language flow, as you said it. And if you have kids, not worry about whether they make a mistake or not, and just try to give a tale. When that happens, it's not important if they make mistakes. It's okay. And this is very hard for people to understand. We tend to be very judgmental of our own performance. So this whole thing about how to be more relaxed in telling the tale works.
I absolutely agree when it comes to speaking, particularly in fluency and confidence. Let's not focus in on the mistakes. However, people might get the impression David never is concerned about accuracy, and that's not at all true, because I think it's all in teaching. I mean, if we're talking about language teaching now, it's all about where is it appropriate to be attentive to accuracy? Where is it appropriate to be attentive to fluency? And I think for me, I mean, I would often I would often use storytelling. No, not use storytelling. I'd often do storytelling and then follow it up with an activity where we did focus in more on accuracy. So we might look at, a part of a story, or if a student sent me a recording of themselves telling a story, I would say, well, I would actually have tutorials with that student to find out, well, what is it that they wanted to work on regarding accuracy? And we could actually use things that they said in a story to focus in on being clearer in their communication. Initial impetus of sharing stories it's like you say, so much more than getting the right verb tense.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And David, well, you use the storytelling a lot with your students, and I know that you learned a lot of stories from your students because you taught international students. Is there one particular story that you'd like to tell us right now?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a book called Storytelling with Our Students, Techniques for Telling Tales from Around the World. And all of the stories in that book were stories that I learned from people that I had taught. And that's continued. So I think when I started, I would find most of my stories from books or from the internet. As time's gone on, I've found myself much more as a mediator, a person who learns stories. I have the very good fortune to meet people all the time from very many different regions of the world. I get to hear a lot of stories, and sometimes I hear stories which are very familiar, but I often hear stories which I've never heard before. And if I love a story, I ask permission to retell it. So that's become a thing that I do most of the time. I'd like to tell you a story that I kind of learned from a woman called Subhaporn Panoy. She gave her name as Pleng, like as a nickname, and Pleng comes from Thailand. Most of my teaching over the years has been with adult or young adult learners of English. So while I have learned quite a lot of stories from children, most of the stories I've learned have been from young adults. And Pleng told this story in one of the last classes I taught before the pandemic. I think it was around 2019. And it really had an impact on me. But the way I retell her story is quite different, really, from the way she told it, because she was very hesitant. It was a kind of the bare bones of a story. And I kind of got the main idea of it. But afterwards, and this is what I think storytellers often do, I went away and researched the story. I looked for different versions of the story, and I found a version in a collection of Burmese stories, stories from Myanmar. So perhaps it's got the common root with the version that Pleng told. So this is my retelling of Pleng's story, which was I published in a magazine called English Teaching Professional, and here it is anyway. I've told it so many times since to so many learners of English. It's called Wise Masabe. There was a girl called Masabe. She lived with her mother in a remote place by a wide river. They had a small hut and they were poor. They had some land where they could grow rice and vegetables. They scraped a living. But the reason for their poverty was really to do with the king of that land. This king was a tyrant, greedy, selfish, cruel, and a liar. He would exploit his people, take too much money from them in tax and rent. Everybody was in debt to the king. Well, a day came when that ruler was riding on his elephant. He rode along beside the wide river, and he saw a young woman working in the fields. Now, I should tell you that this king had 300 wives. 300 wives. But he was always looking for a next wife. She will be my new wife. Look how young and beautiful and perfect she is. And he rode past her and came to the hut where her mother stood outside. And her mother bowed, and the king looked down from his elephant and said, "Your daughter's name?" "Why do you ask, O great king?" "Don't answer back with a question. I asked your daughter's name." "My daughter's name is Masabe." "Masabe," said the king. "Your daughter Masabe will be my new wife." "No," said Masabe's mother, who knew the cruel heart the king had. "You refuse. You cannot turn my offer down. You are in debt to me." "Please, O great king, spare my daughter. She is young. Please, there must be a way." The king laughed. "There will be a game. I will return tomorrow to take your daughter, but there will be a game, and the game will decide whether she marries me or not." And laughing, the king turned his elephant around and rode back the way he had come, towards his grand palace. When Masabe returned from the fields, her mother, weeping, broke the news. But Masabe was young and wise. "Don't worry, mother. There will be a game." The next day the king returned, riding along beside that deep river. He was followed by a retinue of guards in shining uniforms. The king himself was in golden robes with a bright turban on his head. The elephant was decorated with fine cloths of silver, blue, and red, a magnificent sight to behold. When the king reached Masabe's home, outside stood the mother and the daughter, and the king climbed down from his elephant and stood looking at Masabe, who bowed. "Masabe, come and marry me." The king looked so pleased with himself. Masabe looked at the king. There was no trace of fear in her eyes. My mother told me there would be a game. A game, said the king. Ha ha! There will be a game. And the king reached for a bag, a beautiful silk bag. Masabe, inside this bag there are 2 pebbles. One is black and one is white. Put your hand into the bag and take one pebble and show us what you have chosen. If you take the white pebble, you don't have to marry me, and your mother will have no more debts. But Masabe, if you take the black pebble, then you will marry me, and your mother will have no more debts. Your mother wins either way. Will you play? Masabe's mother tried to intervene. My daughter, do not play. She feared the king's evil heart. But Masabe looked the king in the eye, and she saw into his dark heart. And she knew the king was lying. She knew that both of the pebbles in that beautiful silk bag were black. I will play, said Masabe. Can you imagine what Masabe did? The king held out the bag and Masabe reached in. She felt 2 small, smooth pebbles. She took one in her fist, drew it out from the bag, and keeping her hand closed, she peeped inside. Oh, I am free! I do not have to marry the king. My mother has no more debts. We are free. And there beside the river she danced and she danced and she danced, spinning and skipping until the pebble dropped from her hand into the deep river. What have you done? Said the king. You dropped the pebble. Oh, I'm sorry, great king. In my joy and excitement, I let the pebble fall into the water. But then how do we know which pebble you took? And Masabe looked at the king and smiled. I have an idea. O great king, open the silk bag, take out the other pebble, and then we will all know which pebble I took. And at that moment, the king realized that Masabe was far wiser than he would ever be. She had outsmarted him. What could he say in front of all of his armed guards? He climbed onto his elephant, and humiliated, he turned and rode away. And Masabe called after him, there are no more debts. My mother is free, and so am I. And together, Masabe and her mother, beside that deep river, they danced, and they danced, and they danced.
Yay.
That is a story that I was inspired to tell from hearing it from Pleng, from Thailand. It's a Burmese folk tale. And it's a story that's very close to my heart. I've told that story to many, many children, teenagers in many, many schools. And I always have that pause. What do you think she's going to do? And the kids come up with the most wonderful ideas, about covering the pebble in white flour or changing it for a pebble on the ground or just taking both the pebbles out and exposing the truth. And another thing I love to do with that story is ask, well, Masabe has saved herself, but she hasn't saved those 300 wives. What would be your sequel? How could Masabe free them? And again, they come up with wonderful ideas of not freeing them through violence, but using her wit to show and expose the king's cruelty. I love this idea in stories, but I'm a great believer in stories can open our minds to possibilities. And in a way, I see that as an activist story, a story about, it's a story with a strong female, so about female emancipation, but also overcoming tyranny. And I'm just very excited to tell you that the most recent story that I was told by a girl in Gaza just a few weeks ago was that story. Bessan had learned that story from me. I think she's 14, had learned it and retold it. And I just shared it a couple of weeks ago. And I just think that's wonderful.
That was great, David. I love that story. I tell that story as well, and I learned it from you. I didn't know it before I heard it from you. And I recently heard Janet Crouch give another version of it. And that's lovely.
Oh,
I really like that
wonderful.
story to be told as much as possible, yeah. Both for women's emancipation, as you mentioned, but also for fighting oppression with your wit. That's the whole point, how to outwit the oppressor.
Absolutely. And there are so many stories like that, of tricksters particularly. I love those stories. But I would actually like to talk a bit about what I'm doing at the moment, because at the moment I'm doing a project called Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale. And over the last few years, I've worked a lot with teachers who come from Gaza, teachers of English. And in 2020, together with John Rowe at the World Storytelling Cafe, during lockdown, we wanted a place where young people could come and tell stories from anywhere in the world. And kids came from Nigeria, from India, from the UK, from many different places, including Greece and Italy. But a very large number of kids came from Gaza. And that was partly to do with the connections that I had with Gaza, but also the enthusiasm and the eagerness of kids in Gaza to be able to speak to people outside of Gaza, outside of Palestine, because of the restrictions and the limitations on them. And and we talked earlier about confidence, and what just staggering is the confidence of the kids from Palestine when it came to storytelling. It seemed to be absolutely part of who they were, and it was mostly girls that came, and they were such great communicators and such great storytellers. And this was all recorded because that's what happens with the World Storytelling Cafe. So come the end of 2023, the most natural response from me was to start looking back through those archives, picking out wonderful stories told by children in Gaza and sharing them, saying, listen to the humanity and the creativity of these young people. Listen to the beautiful messages in their stories. Most of these children went to UNRWA schools, and the education and the curriculum in UNRWA schools in Gaza was incredibly life affirming, about global citizenship, about justice, peace, harmony, reconciliation. I mean, the themes were just wonderful. And these were stories that the children chose themselves. So they either found them, sometimes they found them in their course book, often they found them on YouTube. Sometimes it was stories they'd learned from their families or communities. And then they took these stories, which often they'd heard in Arabic, and then translated them into English, and then worked together with their teacher to get kind of coached, a bit of coaching. So, and the coaching from their teachers was fantastic, I have to say. And then they would come to the World Storytelling Cafe and tell their story. And some of the kids came back again and again and again. Young people like Raghad, who's Sahar Sayam's daughter, Noor, Hala Muntasalem came again and again and again and told fantastic stories. Just brilliant young people. Malak, well, there's so many, I can't name them all. And I just was mind blown. I learned so many fantastic stories from them. But the story that I've and many stories have come in recently, in the last few months, in spite of all the challenges. some of the young people in Gaza have managed to send me MP4 recordings of themselves telling stories. And often it's taken them hours to upload these stories because of poor internet, but they're just so keen to have their stories heard. I would like to tell a story that I learnt from a teenage girl called Maysoon. And Maysoon was the student of a teacher who did the very first Crest course, Heba Hamouda. And of all the children that came to the World Storytelling Cafe, Maysoon probably told the most outrageously funny story. And it was a story that she made up herself. In November 2024, I received the terrible news that Maysoon had been killed in an Israeli airstrike, along with other members of her family. And this had a huge impact on me and on, of course, not just me, on so many people. And I got in contact with her teacher, Heba, and I said, Heba, I have an idea. You know I'm sharing stories. In fact, I've already shared the story that Maysoon told at the World Storytelling Cafe. In fact, your friend and my friend Phoebe has already retold Maysoon's story. But how would you feel if I shared the story again and mentioning the fact that Maysoon has been killed in tribute to her, in memory of her? And Heba said, absolutely, we have to keep the stories alive, the stories that the young people told and created. And she was delighted. So I did. I shared Maysoon's story. And immediately, 2 days later, Jackie Ross, our friend in Scotland, wonderful storyteller, told Maysoon's story because she was motivated and moved to do that. And it's taken me a while. I told Maysoon's story a couple of times, but I haven't actually told it in a public forum that's going to be like online. But I would like to be able to tell it now, if that's okay with you, in tribute to all of the children from Palestine who have been suffering so much over the last 16 months and who face incredible struggles. Right now, as we speak, there's a very fragile ceasefire, but we don't know what's about to happen. So for all of the kids in Gaza, but particularly in memory of Maysoon, I'm going to tell the story of the fairy tale rabbit who lived on the moon. Canya McCann for Cadim as a man, there was once and there was not a rabbit. But this was no ordinary rabbit. He lived in the green fields and the forests and roamed freely and loved nothing more than eating carrots with his friends, running in the wild. There was something special about this rabbit, as I said, that you might be surprised to hear, because this was an enormous rabbit, a muscular rabbit, a powerful rabbit, a rabbit we can only imagine. Now, at that time, there was a hunter who had roamed far away from his home and was searching for animals, game that he could catch, kill, take home, sell their meat. And he heard a loud crunching, a crunching of carrots, but so loud, this can't be a rabbit, surely. And the hunter came closer and peeped through the foliage and saw, oh, I can't believe my eyes, such a powerful, muscular rabbit. And it occurred to that hunter, this rabbit, I should not kill this rabbit. I will catch this rabbit. I will take this rabbit home to my idiot manager, and this manager will reward me. We could have a festival, and this rabbit could be the centerpiece of the festival. There will be celebrations. We will earn a fortune. My salary will be increased. And as this hunter dreamed of a bright future, he had a plan. The hunter was strong. He leapt through the greenery, caught hold of the rabbit, gripped on tight. And our fierce, muscular hero struggled, tossing and stretching and pushing, but could not escape the determined grip of the hunter. The hunter held on tight, running through the forest. Ha ha! I've caught you! I will make my fortune! But at this moment, you won't believe, dear listeners, that from above there came a strange, spooky, whirring sound, coming lower and lower from the sky. And there, beside them, in the clearing in the forest, landed a glowing spacecraft. The hunter froze, terrified, eyes wide open. Out of the spacecraft stepped a green alien. There truly are aliens, thought the hunter. And the alien was holding what appeared to be a space gun. Well, at seeing this, the hunter did not stick around. He forgot about the fortune that he might earn with the muscular rabbit, dropped the rabbit on the ground, and fled as fast as his legs would carry him. But our muscular hero did not run, was fascinated. And as the green aliens surrounded him, they spoke. Welcome, welcome to our spacecraft. Come with us. Who are you? Said the rabbit. We live on the moon, and we have been watching you since you were born. It was foretold that a muscular rabbit would live in this forest, and a day would come when you would need to be rescued. And so we are here to save you, to bring you to the moon, where you can roam free in safety and have as many carrots as you want. Well, the muscular rabbit was persuaded and stepped onto the spacecraft and soon found himself in the wilds of the moon. And the leader greeted him. But why are you not happy? I'm the only rabbit, said our muscular hero. Surely you don't expect me to live here on my own without my friends? Please let my friends be brought to the moon too, so we can roam around and enjoy moon carrots and run free and wild. And so it was agreed. And I tell you that now our muscular hero is running, jumping, munching on the most delicious, enormous moon carrots in the company of his best friends. This is the story of the fairy tale rabbit who lived on the moon, a story created by Maysoon from Gaza. And Maysoon, if you're listening up there in the wilds of the moon, I hope you'll forgive me for reinventing your story, as storytellers we often do, and telling it in my own way, but very much inspired by your creativity, wild imagination, and wonderful sense of humour.
Was a wonderful story, David, and a great homage to Maysoon and all the children in Gaza. Thank you so much also for telling us about the project that you're doing, Tell a Child in Gaza Sale. That's a wonderful project.
I just want to clarify that it's not only my project, it's very much shared with everybody, and I'm running it together with my very close friend, Haneen Khaled Jadala, who I think you know very well as well. Of course you do. We're dear friends. And Haneen is a huge inspiration and has been running other wonderful projects. Her project Voices Across Worlds is kind of almost in parallel with Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale, where she's working together with young people from Gaza and the West Bank in Palestine, and people in Cameroon, in Malaysia, in Greece, and getting teachers and young people to tell personal stories, learn each other's personal stories, and then turn them into pieces of online Zoom theatre. And it's a really inspiring project. So I've got lots of plans with Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale to take it in not the same direction, but a very, very in some similar ways of actually bringing the stories that have been told by children in Gaza and then responding to those stories with personal stories and turning that into a publication. But I'm not going to say any more about that right now because I'm putting together an application for funding. Let's hope that it comes to fruition.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that when we publish the episode, or when we release the episode, maybe we'll have news about what happened with the project. So maybe our listeners will be happy to know that it went through. Who knows? Let's see.
I hope so.
So, David, we talked about storytelling in education. We talked about your courses. We talked about Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale project. But I would also like to talk briefly about another big project that you did, which was a project I was really happy to be involved in. And it was really my big project to be a part of. And it was around the world in 88 Tales, which you did in collaboration with the museum in Exeter. Would you like to tell us something about that? Because that's a big project that you did.
Yeah, that was a wonderful experience. So yeah, the idea was, again, this was kind of coming out of the pandemic, but it was a time when museums were just beginning to open their doors again. So the idea was a project that met that need for and the museum were interested in having a more global reach. And I was and am interested in celebrating stories from around the world. So in Around the World in 88 Tales, I contacted teachers from around the world and found 44 storytellers like yourself and asked them to meet me on Zoom. And in each meeting, we had an object, an artifact from the museum in Exeter. And I told a folk tale that object prompted me to tell. So I talk a little bit about the object, a bit of information, a bit of factual information, but then it became much more about imagination and creative response, and then invited you, the storyteller in Italy or in Singapore or in Peru, to respond with a story. And a lot of the storytellers told stories which were from traditions from their own heritages, but not all of them. Some people told stories that they created themselves, or stories from, there are many universal stories that were told as well. That was a really beautiful project. And it led to other things. I mean, I was fascinated that Georgiana Popan in Romania developed her own project out of that within Romania, where and it's still going on. So there's lots of educational projects going on in museums in Romania where kids are visiting other museums remotely and learning through stories. So it kind of inspired other projects, which is very exciting. Yeah, that was a really, really good experience. And another thing that you and I do together, Simona, of course, is hosting the annual, because we've done it twice now, we can say the annual Storytelling in Education conference, which I think is very successful. And we've had some amazing speakers at this year's, 2024's conference from different parts of the world. So yeah, it's a joy to keep finding new directions and growing.
Yeah, well, I remember just the impact that the project that you did with the museum had on me, and I remember I saw all of the episodes that you were releasing with the stories, and then I when I visited you in Exeter and we went to the museum, it was like, oh, that one, I know the story about this object, I know the story about that object. Oh, I remember this one, I remember that one, and just feeling the connection with an object that would have been just a normal object in the museum, and instead I had already seen that object, I recognized it, I had created a connection through not one but two stories that were told inspired by that object. So it was just I think a wonderful project
I
to
think storytellers have a huge role to play in the heritage industry and museums, just in interpreting objects factually and creatively. It's a wonderful space for education. I think storytelling can be applied in so many areas, in health settings, therapeutic settings as well.
Well, this has been wonderful. And as you said, there are so many different ways to use storytelling, not just education. Well, in an educational sense, yes, but in so many different aspects, or so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's an entertainment as well. I get very into for education, for resistance, for in activism, for therapy. But why is it so successful? It's because it's an entertainment. We just can have such a lovely time sharing stories. The most natural thing to do for a human being is to sit with another human being and exchange stories. I tell you a story, you tell me a story, and we get to know each other, and we become friends through sharing stories.
yeah, absolutely. And well, I've just very recently read this sentence on the book now. I'm not going to say it exactly like it is, but this chapter I was reading was about a storytelling circle, and there was this sentence that struck with me, and it was, "We are like the peasants." Entertaining ourselves instead of paying for entertainment, and it's just exactly we do, like when we get together and we share stories, and it's just
I
such a
like that
wonderful
very
way.
much. Yeah.
Yeah,
The difference is that peasants would know each other already, but what we do with storytelling is we get connected in a much deeper level with people we don't know so well, and then we do get to know them so well. I mean, I've met people online through the storytelling circle, and then when we meet in actual life, we are friends already. It's already built.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very much for granting us this interview, David. It was lovely to have you with us and talk about so many different things that are important to you.
And yeah, I just put out the invitation to everybody who's listening to get in touch with me if you would like to tell a story, particularly a story that you might be willing to learn from a child from Palestine. I'd love to hear from you. And the other project I've got going is people retelling the poem If I Must Die by the Gazan poet Refat Alaria. And if you would like to tell that poem in English, or particularly if you'd like to translate it into any language you speak, that's another very important project that I'm doing. And already we're up to nearly 100 versions in about 80 languages now. Just this morning, I've shared a version in Xhosa, which is a South African language.
it's wonderful. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.